Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. Hopefully, most of you know me by now, but for those who don't, my name is Richard Tonkin, and I'm a statistician with UNSD and also the coordinator for the UNSD-FCDO project on SDG monitoring. As you're aware, the UNSD-FCDO project was originally due to end this summer. However, we were delighted that our sponsor, the UK Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, were able to extend the project, and we know that you are too. In today's webinar, we're going to be introducing the Data for Now initiative and the opportunities that there are going to be relating to it for project countries over the remaining period of this project through to July next year. So I'll start by sharing an overview of what we're going to be covering today. So I'm going to start by giving an update on where we are now in terms of project achievement so far, and also give an introduction to this next phase of the project. Then my colleague Rebecca, who I think you all know well, she's interregional advisor here in UNSD. She is going to be giving an introduction to the Data for Now initiative. And then we're going to hear from two colleagues who you might not know. Daniela, who was a Data for Now coordinator in Colombia, but is now working with us in UNSD to help share the Data for Now initiative with more countries. She's going to be sharing experiences from Colombia. And then Ibrahima, who is the coordinator in Senegal, is going to be sharing experiences from there. Then after then, we're going to have a period for Q&A to answer any questions that you might have on what we've shared so far. And then Elena, my colleague Elena, who again, I think most of you know, same as me, as statistician in UNSD, she is going to be sharing the questionnaire which we've developed to help identify where there are opportunities to work with you as part of the Data for Now initiative through the next stages of the project. And then we'll have a further period of Q&A before moving on to conclusions and next steps. Okay, so we'll start with our project update. Next slide, please. So where are we now? I think it's fair to say that we've seen some absolutely outstanding progress over the last 18 months, despite all of the challenges that we've had with the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm looking at what's been done, what's been achieved by all of the project countries. It's absolutely amazing your achievements, and it should certainly all be congratulating yourselves. We see across all countries really, there's a very high level of ownership of SDG monitoring that's reflected throughout all the other achievements of the project. So almost all of the project countries have now shared data using SDMX, and on the vast majority of you now in a position where you've launched your data platforms. We know several others of you are very close to being able to launch your platforms, and we look forward to seeing those go live in the coming months. And where platforms have been launched, we've seen that universally these are being incorporated into VNRs, used as the basis for providing the data for the VNR and or other national reporting on the SDGs. We've also seen really great progress with regard to metadata and user engagement over the last year. That's the pandemic provided a lot of challenges when it came to engaging with users, with offices being closed, having to work remotely, and so on. But what we've seen certainly over 2021, many of you are now been in a position where you've been able to implement your user engagement strategy, adapting the approaches that you've needed to take account of the current situation. And a number more of you are due to complete user engagement activities over the next couple of months. And we've really got a significant majority of countries now which have been able to produce and disseminate metadata, using the metadata authoring tool templates that has been developed for use both by countries and custodian agencies. And again, for those who haven't yet disseminated metadata, for most of you, there is draft metadata available, and that's due to be finalized soon. And again, by using this latest version of the metadata authoring tool template, be able to share that metadata using SDMX alongside your data and take that into the SDG lab, which allows for the comparison of the national data and metadata with that provided by the custodian agencies. So these are all amazing achievements, and I'm really happy with everything that's been done. I know FCDO are, and hopefully you are too. So what's the next phase of the project going to look like? I kind of agreed this with our sponsors, FCDO. We identified 3 areas of work. On the first of these, it's about ensuring the sustainability of the outcomes that we've achieved so far, in the 20 countries that we're working with. So we're doing that by, in some cases, continuing some of the activities that we've had before, to finish things off where I mentioned that we're still providing support to countries and launching their data platforms, or implementing their user engagement strategy, or finalizing metadata. We're going to provide the support needed to make sure that those are delivered, and also ensure that those activities are sustainable. So if you do have needs for further support, then we are around and able to provide that support. And linked to that, we've already extended most of the MOUs that we have for funding of local activities. Where those are in place, those have been extended until late 2021 to allow the completion of all the agreed activities. And most of the project extension is going to be focused on new activities. So one big area is going to be around the creation of learning materials for use both by yourselves, but also by countries that haven't been involved in the project so far. So we're going to be developing, for example, a new e-learning course on SDMX data modeling, another course on user engagement, and most of you are already familiar with the e-learning course that's available on metadata, we're going to be kind of improving, updating that course as well. Also going to be creating series of micro-learning videos on key topics, for example, using the metadata authoring tool templates and kind of other areas where kind of we've identified that having that focused bit of support through a short video would be really helpful. And so going to be putting together interactive guidance documents, where bringing together all the different resources which we've developed through the project on different aspects of SDG monitoring, whether it's data platforms, data modeling, user engagement, metadata, data sharing, and so on, putting those together in one easily accessible place, which will be there both for you as a reference and a reminder to support with refreshing your skills, but also for non-project countries who want to learn from your experiences. And then the third area of the extension is on piloting some new work in a selected number of countries, which we then pilot in a small number of countries for now over the next year, but then certainly our ambition, subject to having the resources to do so, and the success of these pilots would be to roll out these activities in a wider number of countries in future. So there are two areas which we want to focus these pilot activities on. The first, which is really the focus of today's webinar, is on the use of existing and new data sources, new methods, and new technologies to increase the availability, timeliness, and granularity of SDG data. And to do this, taking the approach of the Data for Now initiative, which Rebecca is going to explain what that is, what that's all about. And we really see these activities as building on the first phase of the project through what we've been doing, things like NSS coordination and user engagement, but moving to support a lot more, not just data sharing, data dissemination, but thinking about activities relating to data collection and data acquisition, as well as statistical production. And then the second area of piloting, which we'll be sharing more on in the future, will be on the use of geospatial information in statistical and production dissemination. And that's really going to be grounded in building closer links, greater collaboration between national statistical offices and national mapping and geospatial agencies. That's something which we're going to be doing in collaboration with the UN Committee of Experts on Global Geospatial Information Management, or GGIM for short. So hopefully that's given you a whistle-stop tour through what we've achieved and what the project is going to be focused on in future. So just going to pass over now to Rebecca, who's going to share more about the Data for Now initiative, which I mentioned. So over to you, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Richard, and hi everyone. Very glad to be talking and discussing with you again related to this project. While you all received an email, email from me that Richard would take over the work on the project, I've also still been involved and followed it, and it's really nice to see how much more progress has happened over the last months. One of the reasons why I'm not so much involved anymore is because I've been following up on the Data for Now initiative work quite a lot, and that has taken much of my time. And that's also what I'm going to share with you a little bit about now. If we could move to the next slide. The Data for Now initiative, as Richard was saying, is an initiative that focuses much more on increasing the availability of better, more timely and disaggregated data for sustainable development. So while the project until now has I mean, our joint UNSD-FCDO project has been focusing more on the actual dissemination of what you already had available. The Data for Now initiative focuses much more on making better use of the data and the sources of data, the methods that are available, and increase the availability of data that you then also, of course, can disseminate. The initiative was initially launched by the UN Deputy and Secretary General Amina Mohammed at the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in September 2019. And it is co-led by UN Statistics Division together with the World Bank, the Global Partnership for Sustainable Development Data, and the Sustainable Development Solutions Network. So we're 4 agencies that we often refer to as the core team, but there are many other partners that are also involved in different ways. And that's another element of this Data for Now initiative, that we try to work together very widely with partners, bringing in different expertise, knowledge, partnerships, also with maybe the more non-traditional contributors to the data world, like the private sector, NGOs, academia, etc. So, so in addition to having a stronger focus on the data work, we also work maybe more focused on the work with partners, although we've also done that in the FCDO project so far. The NSOs are the main partners in countries in this initiative as well. Initially, there were 8 countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Some of them overlapped also with our project, like Ghana and Rwanda, Nepal, Bangladesh are also among the 8 countries that we started working with. But we are also now in the process of extending the scope through this project, among others. But also it's looking like we will be able to expand through other funds so that the Data for Now initiative can be applied also in more countries than the 8 that we started with. Next slide, please. So we've also put together some guiding principles that may be helpful also to understand the approach overall. The main principle for us and for the Data for Now initiative is that priorities are always identified by the countries. And that is why we also take this approach with you in this context, where we now introduce this approach to you and where we ask you to help us identify your priorities and what you think is feasible. And you will hear more from Elena about that after we've given you some more introduction. So as an example, we would go and speak with the country. We would ask them, what is the highest priority in your country to help fill the policy information needs? But then also kind of look at, okay, what is feasible? Which data sources could be better explored? Which methods could be applied to maybe better respond to those policy needs? If that's creation of a new indicator, if it's also increased disaggregation, maybe adding the geospatial element to it, or if there's other pieces. So that's really the key principle of the approach, that it's really the country and in most cases the NSOs that take the lead and decide together with policymakers in the country what should be the priorities. Then we do have data principles and work approach principles. The data principles are that we want to take a holistic perspective from the starting point of getting access to and collecting the data till the finished products. So the whole process from, if you want to say in a GSPPM context, for instance. We also want to focus on production-ready solutions. This is not a project where piloting is a big element of it, because we want concrete results out of it. That being said, there may be border elements that still could be having some elements of piloting. Data quality should be in every project. It's also an element in this project that we need to ensure that while we use maybe innovative methods and approaches, the data quality always needs to be there, so that we maintain the trust of the population in the statistics that are being produced. And then also protection of privacy and confidentiality remains an important element. On the work approach principles, the initiative wants to stay open and inclusive, invite everyone who wants to join in. I mentioned partnerships. We want partnerships as much as possible. So for instance, if you also now in your context see a need, and you know that there are relevant partners that also should be involved, that would be useful to know. We're also very focused on knowledge sharing and transparency. That is, I think, similar to what the project here also is doing. We're making materials available. The initiative is still in very early stages, but the idea is to make learning materials from the countries available, so that other countries and other partners can benefit from it. So it will all be training materials, etc., will all be made available online. Then it's commitment to provide resources from partners and a user-centric approach. And then we also have a couple of principles related to sustainability of the work, that the new approaches also remain sustainable, that we take an agile impact and value creation approach. So if we can move to the next. This is a bit more on kind of how we work. I mentioned we are mapping together with the partners or the countries the gaps and needs, and that is where we are now. And then it's basically identifying resources, identifying solutions, looking at potential partnerships, and then supporting the process. And once the work is done, then again also sharing solutions and lessons learned. And in this case, since many of you already have platforms and systems in place, it would be to add the new pieces to it. I'll stop here and hand over to Daniela, who is has been working closely with us on the collaboration with Colombia, and she'll share some experiences from the work that has been done there. After that, as Richard was saying, we'll hear from Ibrahima, who will share experiences from Senegal, and you will see that the approaches in the two countries are quite different. And that just reflects that it's the countries that have specified priorities and what they want to work on. So, so yeah, as I said, they look quite different. And that's, I think, a good thing. So over to you, Daniela.
Thank you, Vibeke. Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. I would like to share with you some relevant information about the process of data for now in Colombia, and also highlight some good practices that can be useful for the new countries in the project. So, data for now in Colombia, the National Statistical Office in Colombia, DANE, leads the work at the country level. And the initial phase of Data for Now project in Colombia focused on 4 main areas. The first one was the determination of country priorities. Then the identification of currently and potentially available data sources. Then the assessment of training needs and infrastructure requirements. And lastly, the engagement with potential partners. Therefore, Dan identified three national priorities, focusing on the use of non-traditional data sources, new methods, and technologies. Colombia established concrete objectives, focusing on improvement of timeliness, frequency, and level of disaggregation, as well as develop proxy measures of new indicators for the country. So they developed and we developed a plan and refined, and this plan was also refined under the lead of counterparts at the National Statistical Office, providing a strong base for delivering the project outcomes in the subsequent stages of work. So the three national priorities of Colombia that you can see here are: the first one is related to SDG 1, no poverty, and it aims to improve the current poverty estimates with data disaggregation. The second one relates to SDG 4, quality education, and it aims to measure home to school distances and identify how the calculated distance affect educational outcomes. For instance, school dropouts or school attendance rates, as well as strengthen the conceptual framework of the education statistical system. And the third one is related to the SDG 16, develop proxy measures of indicators associated with perception using non-conventional sources such as social networks. So after this prioritization process, the identification of current and potentially available data sources, Dani team identified also 7 specific topics where training and advisory consulting services are needed, and most areas are being supported by external partners, as the training and technical assistance identified by Dani are very specific. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Thank you. So it is good here to mention that these trainings are designed to be hands-on, to provide knowledge and skills that enable participants to apply new data estimation methods and to assess the quality of the outputs. This approach includes both the provision of training sessions and the subsequent technical support for the implementation of the methods covered in the training sessions. And the third one is document feedback and guidance on models outputs produced by the technical teams, in this case at Dani, the statistical office. So here I would like to mention some trainings and advisory consultancies for capacity development that are currently being delivered for the Data for Now project in Colombia. So one is a training and support for the implementation of statistical and analytical methods for creating geographically disaggregated poverty estimates. The second one is related to the education area, where training for strengthening knowledge and practical capacities among Danish staff to process, classify, and use satellite imagery, remote sensor data in statistical analysis, a range of relevant techniques, such as artificial intelligence methods and or neural networks. Some other training that I would like to highlight, it's a training on natural language processing, include the use of machine learning techniques, neural networks, and text mining using social media. All these trainings are also related to one of the priorities identified by Colombia and by Dani. Next slide, please. So one thing that I would like also to mention regarding these trainings is that all trainings here in Colombia are being recorded and will be added to a repository of knowledge in order to allow them to be shared as good practices with other countries once the project in Colombia is concluded. And here finally I would like to share some good practices and highlight some good practices about the initial and implementation phase of the project. So something to highlight is that DANE has arranged expert staff for each thematic area, which has allowed the teams to make significant progress and also demonstrating the country ownership of the project. External stakeholders have contributed and supported the project through exchange of information, good practices, and technical advice. Some of these external stakeholders are UNESCO, UNDP, UNODC, CEPEI, ESRI, POPGRID, and ECLAC. So Colombia has had several meetings with external stakeholders as well as presentations about their work, and it has been possible also to find synergies between what has already been done by others with the objectives and results to be achieved in the project. So the aim is to build from what has been built already. And also the training and technical cooperation needs were refined with the active participation of national teams, aimed to identify knowledge gaps within the statistical office and the national statistical system. And areas where technical trainings would allow to produce indicators based on available data sources and the use of new technologies and methods. So thank you very much, and now we can pass to the experiences of Senegal. My colleague Ibrahima would present that part. Thank you.
So, Ibrahima, I think you're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Daniela, for sharing the experience of Colombia. I will do the same. My name is Ibrahima. I am the coordinator of the project in Senegal. I will put off my video because the quality of my connection. Okay. I will my presentation will focus in 2 points. The first will be about the approach adopted for the prioritization of the need, and the second will be about the development of the partnership for the capacity building of all the members of the national statistics system. Regarding to the approach to the prioritization, UNSD was placed at the heart of the participatory process involving all relevant stakeholders of the national statistics system. First, during the launch workshop in Kigali in September 2019, UNSD has chosen 5 thematic. The first is the food security related to the SDG 2. The second is the land use and urban data related to the SDG 11. The third is related to the climate change. To the fourth, sustainable land, water, and forest management, SDG 15. And UNSD member has also chosen the COVID-19 because the context, the background at this moment. many consultation has done with between UNSD and the stakeholders. And during this consultation, for each thematic, we had identified some priorities. The exchange between UNSD and the key stakeholder lead to an initial list of priority indicator for each theme. It should be noted that UNSD and stakeholders has chosen to focus on the indicators that not yet available from the national statistics system itself, but which data that we need are available. For example, for the land use and urban data, the statistics are available but produced by UN Habitat. And for the food security, the statistics are also available but produced by FAO. And that is the reason why INSD and stakeholders have chosen to focus on the indicator that they can themselves produce. Next, after they have partnership for the capacity building of the national statistics system. In Senegal, Data for Now project has succeeded in development a high-level partnership for capacity building of both INSD staff and also the national statistics system staff. For example, in collaboration with FAO, we have been organized a training related to the FIES methodology for the food security. And now the INSD members, the INSD staff, and all the members working on the food security are following a capacity building related to the FIEF methodology and the calculation of the food security prevalence in September 8 and 9, 2021. We have also planned a capacity building with FAO on the methodology of the prevalence of undernourishment, the POE, and another training has also planned about the indicator 2.3.1 and 2.3.2. We have also a collaboration with UN Habitat, and we have planned to a capacity building on the calculation of the priority of the land use, and we will head this training in October. And in collaboration with the National Statistic Division, we have also planned to make a training about the small area estimation. And we have also discussing with INSD, and we have decided, and INSD have decided to focus the small area estimation methodology about the FIEF indicator. Donc, that is what I would like to share with you. The process about the selection of the key indicator, and we can say that this process is participatory because INSD was at the heart, and all the relevant stakeholders are involved in the discussion. And we had also developing a high-level partnership with FAO, with UN Habitat, with other organizations to involve to improve the capacity of the national statistics system to permit us to compute themselves this indicator. Thank you. I will return the floor to Daniela. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibrahima. So we would like to wrap up this section of the webinar with our last slide on Colombia and Senegal at a glance. So we want to emphasize the type of results that we are expecting. So we are expecting increased availability of inclusive data. Therefore, Colombia and Senegal are working on producing new indicators or improving the disaggregation and timeliness of indicators related to 7 different SDGs, in addition to monitor and mitigate the impact of COVID-19 pandemic in Senegal, as Ibrahima was mentioning. Also, national statistical system capacity developed in range of areas, specific needs identified in partnerships and capabilities and strengthened in areas including data processing, data quality, geospatial data analysis, and use of citizens generated data with support provided by a range of experts from international agencies and academia and others. And partnerships are built nationally and internationally. So a number of national and international partners provide knowledge and expertise, as we have seen in our presentation, in support of the project, and key partners involved at international level, in addition to the 4 co-partners, include, as we already mentioned, some of the other stakeholders that participate, as UNDP, CEPEI, and UN Habitat, for instance, and also the citizen science community. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much, Daniela, Ibrahima, and Rebecca. So we've been sharing a lot of information so far in this webinar, kind of talking about the overall project extension, the activities which we want to do relating to the Data for Now initiative, working with a kind of small group of the project countries to help increase the availability of inclusive data. And then most recently we had the experiences from Colombia and Senegal, which give some indication of the breadth of different types of activities which we might be able to do in countries to help achieve those objectives. So I'll hand over to you for any questions that you might have at this stage on anything we've shared so far. Please feel free to unmute if you've got any questions. As Elena mentions, so feel free to type your questions into the chat, and we've got this Q&A session now, and we're also going to have a kind of bit more time for Q&A later in the webinar, so I can either answer them now or later in the webinar. I just saw in the chat that a kind of couple of people at least kind of missed some bits of Daniela's presentation with poor connection, but just to confirm that we'll be sharing the recording of the webinar, so you can go back and listen over kind of anything that you've missed or would like to hear again. Any kind of any questions at this stage?
Hello.
Hello. So
Hello.
Alamgir.
Yep. Sorry. Just for a query that as an implementing country, Bangladesh is started implementing the data for now activities here.
Mm-hmm.
You know that we have just recently started working on it, and due to the COVID issues, there was lockdown in Bangladesh, and we are far away to implement the uh, initiative in Bangladesh. So it will take some time to do it. Is there any possibility to extend the project of data for now, as well as will we get more time to implement the unfinished activities of the UNSD-FCDO project uh, for the situation we faced due for the COVID-19? Is there any possibility of that?
Okay. Thanks, Alamgir. Kind of, and obviously we can appreciate the challenges that you've had kind of in Bangladesh, kind of with the with COVID-19. Kind of, I know that the situation kind of over the kind of last year has been very challenging, as it has in many of the countries. So, see, on the kind of remaining activities from the first phase of the UNSD-FCDO project, so, you know, we have kind of extended country MOUs, kind of where those are in place to kind of allow extra time to implement all of the activities that were planned and were potentially postponed due to COVID. And similarly, we're continuing to provide some support, refresher trainings kind of as necessary to help countries complete their kind of their ongoing activities. Kind of on data for now, kind of see, Bangladesh is one of the trailblazer countries and has already been involved in kind of data for now related activities, with kind of some support coming from a kind of from a different source, and that kind of that funding is ending very soon. And I think certainly on we can be happy to kind of look at kind of ways in which it's possible to kind of to build upon kind of what's been done already kind of in Bangladesh to identifying kind of new needs kind of and or kind of building on and kind of further extending the achievements that have happened so far. On my colleague Elena is going to talk a bit more in a second about how we're going to kind of start engagement and discussion with with FCDO project countries kind of around data for now related activities. So I won't say too much more now. I can leave that to Elena to how we're going to start that engagement. But hopefully that answer was helpful for now. Has anyone got any other questions before we move on to Elena's? Oh, okay, I think if not, I can pass to you, Elena, and if you can think of any, if you have any questions which come up kind of during Elena's presentation, then please add them in the chat or share them during the Q&A session afterwards. Over to you.
So they can follow along while I was trying to look up this perhaps. Try to share my screen.
Oh, Elena, I think we're losing you a little bit. I think you've maybe got some connectivity issues.
Are you able to see the content now?
Yes, yeah, we can see it now.
I think there is something going on. Hopefully, until developing this question. For us to continue doing this deal. One of the primary principles of the data for now approach is, of course, the different kind of focusing on the country priorities, understanding what countries would like to accomplish in terms of making data more timely, more disaggregated, producing more priority indicators that are currently not available. So this questionnaire is designed to give us a better idea of what that could look like. And of course, as we mentioned, this next phase of our project is going to last until July of next year, 2022. So that gives us kind of a condensed time frame in which to accomplish some measurable, some achievable results in producing some of the indicators or in using data sources, innovative data sources, or producing disaggregation. So we really would like to kind of focus our efforts on some key areas where we have identified priorities and also where there are things that are achievable. So maybe for those of you who remember our initial assessments, feasible with some effort. So kind of that group of indicators or of data sources, etc. So we have about 9 months left until the final kind of end of the next phase. So with that, bearing that in mind, the questionnaire is really designed to kind of focus our attention on these achievable kind of quick wins during this time frame. Of course, filling out the questionnaire isn't mandatory, just to kind of preface it. It's really for those countries that would like to kind of embark on this next phase with us. So it's for those that are interested in undertaking the further activities. And also it's designed to kind of get you to think whether there's enough kind of capacity in the NSO as well, because that could be, sometimes an issue, especially with the restrictions of COVID, and also with certain work in the NSO that's been delayed, perhaps due to COVID, and is now going to be taken in the next several months. So really, it's good to think about how much capacity is there, how much staff can be involved in this kind of next phase. So please bear that in mind as well. And hopefully you have a better idea of the background of what DIFO is, the approach, the different guiding principles. So I won't reiterate that, but that should help you kind of think about how to fill out the questionnaire. So there are 4 parts to the questionnaire, and in addition to this kind of very short intro part where basically it's just to identify the submission. So you would here fill out the country or the NSO, and if you consulted any other national organizations in your questionnaire response, you could indicate those here. So for instance, if you're involved in speaking with particular line ministries that responsible for some of the indicators that you indicate, etc., that would be helpful to indicate here, and the date that you filled out the questionnaire. So that's just the intro part. And then there are 4 main kind of thematic or substantive parts to this questionnaire. The first one talks about country priorities. There's a second part that talks about the indicators that you'll be selecting. And then also potential data sources. And the third part talks about training needs. So any training needs related to this kind of this work that you're hoping to undertake. And the fourth part, importantly, is institutional capacity. So how much kind of time and staff resources are available to participate in this effort. So I'll go through each of the sections one by one. And the first one is identifying country priorities. So as you heard, the Data for Now approach really puts the emphasis on making sure that what we're undertaking is very much in line with the priorities of the country. So the country makes the decisions about which direction to take this. For example, as you saw in Colombia and Senegal, they chose different SDGs and different areas of focus. And so this is very much a tailored approach. And so, of course, for that, the initial step would be to identify what are these main priority areas and where would the focus need to be. So in question 1.1, we ask, what are the main priority policy areas identified by your government? And then also, how do these link with your national development plans or strategies? And so you could also include a link to the policy document, or you could attach it also as an email attachment to the questionnaire when you submit it, but basically identifying kind of where the priorities lie in relation to this work. And then 1.2 asks about data needs and gaps that are associated with these priorities. Where there are these identified priorities, what has kind of prevented creating improved estimates, and also here we can mention up to 3 to 5 SDG related indicators that are related, and also specify whether there are currently no estimates produced for these indicators. So if you already have an indicator, but there's maybe a different data source that you would like to kind of exploit to produce it, because you think that the frequency would be more frequent, or it'd be more timely, or there would just be better disaggregation, we can work on these existing estimates, or it can be something new that it currently does not exist, but for which we can look at new data sources, etc. So that's question 1.2. 1.3 talks specifically about COVID-19, in case there are national priorities linked to COVID-19, and if there are any new or improved estimates or indicators needed in the context of the ongoing pandemic. And 1.4 talks about what are the factors that are preventing the production of the indicators. So maybe there's a need to better understand a method of calculation. Maybe there's some issues with access to data or sharing of data. Maybe there's some capacity constraints. Maybe more training is needed, which we'll cover in one of the subsequent sections. But just to better understand what it is that's preventing you from producing these indicators at the required frequency or disaggregation right now. So those are the 4 questions in this first section on country priorities, which will really kind of set the stage and set the focus for the following sections. Are there any questions at this stage on the first section, or just kind of the questionnaire purpose, etc.? If not, then I can continue to the next section. So the following section is on the selected indicators and potential data sources. So here, we'd like you to think about what you've listed as the priorities in the first section, and also consider the kind of the time frame, which is around 9 months at this point, to really think about what could be feasible during this time frame and what can we prioritize. And so we're looking at up to 3 indicators. It's a kind of a good measure, a good achievable sort of feasible number. And this doesn't have to be, you know, the final kind of selection, but it's good to kind of identify some of these indicators already in filling out this questionnaire. So the section 2 has basically 3 subsections, 1 for each indicator, and they're the same. They're just labeled indicator 1. And then there's the questions for indicator 1, and then the same questions follow for indicator 2. And indicator 3 also has the same questions. So it's just broken up to be more easily read. So for the first indicator, we asked, are there estimates currently produced in NO or indicator? And so you can choose no, not yet, yes, but it needs improved disaggregation. And then you can also enter some detail regarding that, specifically which kinds of disaggregation. Yes, but improved frequency is needed. It can also that are currently available, which could be used to produce or improve the estimates of this indicator in line with the policy objectives. And so here you could look at geospatial data, for example, you know, including household surveys, administrative data, and basically any kind of traditional or non-traditional data source that you are interested in using, because this is also the focus here is on kind of innovative approaches and innovative data sources. So if there's something you would like to try out and there's you know, expertise in the field somewhere that can help you achieve it, then we'd like to know about this. And then the next question goes on to ask about potentially relevant data sources that you have access to but are not able to fully make use of. So for example, if you have some capacity constraints in data processing and you need some technical assistance for that, so you would indicate that here. And finally, there's a question about whether there are any potentially relevant data sources that you don't currently have access to, but would be feasible to secure access to for this project. So maybe it's other parts of government that have this data and there needs to be some sharing agreement, or maybe there's a private sector partnership that could be established, or those data in the public domain. So really kind of looking at the different data sources for this indicator. So that's the extent of the questions for the indicator, and the same questions apply for the second one and also the third one. And then the third section covers associated training needs. So specifically training needs related to these policy priorities and the selected indicators. So here in question 3.1, it asks about specifically what you've indicated in sections 1 and 2. So not general kind of training needs that apply to various areas of statistics, but specifically for these policy priorities and for these identified indicators. So which skills is the NSO or NSS missing to produce the specific indicators described, or the established associated statistical processes? And then also 3.2 asks, how will addressing these training needs identified in above, in the question above, help you deliver the identified objectives? So just to kind of have you thinking a little bit more along those lines in terms of how does this training relate specifically to the objectives of the priorities. And then 3.3, there's a selection of different areas that we've seen, for example, that we've provided in terms of capacity development in our two project countries that have been using the data for now approach, to Colombia and Senegal. So we've had some training on data processing, geospatial data, actually available, so you can access that capacity development information as well. And of course, if you need anything specific that is within one of these categories or other, you could indicate it here and provide further details. And then also we'd like to know which organizations within the national statistical system would need to participate in the proposed trainings. So if it's other line ministries or other organizations within the NSS, you can indicate them here. And the final section is very important. It's on institutional capacity and availability. So this is where we'd like you to think about whether it's feasible to bring together a team virtually, current date that could involve all the different participants from the relevant areas. For example, since now we're focusing not just on dissemination, we'd have staff that are working on data collection, production, dissemination, probably some and technology that could kind of have this interdisciplinary team working together on the objectives you've identified. So kind of just maybe provide a little bit of an explanation of how this would be, how this team would be assembled. And question 4.2 is about any existing partnerships in your country that have improved timeliness, coverage, and quality of data for the SDGs that you think could be scaled up, because of course that could also really allow you to attain these objectives faster if we can also harness existing partnerships. And finally, kind of the final question after all, after responding to all of the above questions, do you see the potential for implementing these activities as part of the UNSD-FCDO project over the next several months, finishing in July of 2022? So this is the questionnaire. As you saw, it's basically 4 short sections, and one of the sections deals with the specific 3 indicators that you can identify. And so we'll be sending this, of course, by email to you. We just wanted to kind of present it before we send it out so that you get an idea of what it looks like and what we're aiming to achieve with this questionnaire. And so do you have any questions at this stage?
Good afternoon. Hello.
Yes, hello.
Yes, here is Mozambique. It's not for, we don't have a question as a question. It's just to comment that this year, we as a National Institute of Statistics, we had an opportunity to publish our first report on DSTG, where we shared the list of indicators that the country was now able to produce, and there we find some gaps that we need to fill for the future. So we think this is a very good opportunity to, in partnership with the UN Statistical Division, work together to fill these gaps that we have, to try to complete the list of indicators on SDGs. We appreciated the list that was presented in a way we can benefit in training, for example, where is one thing that we now fighting on improving, because we have some gaps in training. So we think that we'll have a chance to fill this questionnaire and share our gaps that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mozambique. It would be great to hear from you on the specific gaps that are still remaining that you would like to focus on. I see Omar from Ghana.
Yeah.
Hello.
Thank you very much for the opportunity for the presentation. I'm shy away from which we may need to
Omar, I'm having trouble here. I don't know if it's my connection. It's a little bit breaking up a little bit.
I can't hear you either, Omar. You
especially our activities to identify who are part of this, and then I request them to. Can you hear me? Hello, hello, hello.
Or maybe you could type your question. It's
hello. Can you hear me
breaking
now?
up quite a bit.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now I can hear you.
Yes, can hear you now.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Okay, so
Yes.
so I'm sure my system had a problem, so I've just plugged in some earpiece, so I think that is fine now. Yeah, so what I was drawing our attention to is that there's usually one part of the puzzle that we have usually shied away from, and that is funding availability for NSOs to implement some of these. And this is particularly important because in this questionnaire, I would have expected, especially in the context of data for now, because all the institutions that began the discussions were part of the initial discussions on data for now. Not everybody has been able to move ahead with some of the things. So this questionnaire should have, for instance, identified what have been the funding challenges and how the NSOs themselves are trying or are working to mitigate that, to serve as a platform for learning for others. Because as we know, many NSOs in the global south are saddled with low funding for their core mandate. So sometimes it becomes very difficult when you come up with the idea, okay, we want to do this additional activity. Then even within the NSO, you get a pushback because costs being allocated to that becomes a problem. So in my case, in Ghana, what I have tried to do is one of the key areas that under data for now that we wanted to implement is identifying children with special education needs who are not in school, because there's no data on them. Because the children with special education needs who are in school, then there's information on them. But for those who are not in school, there's no data collection system that identifies them. And so the only opportunity we have is census. So what I've done is to go out, write proposals to try to get some funding to do that piece of work, because these are a potential group of children that we are leaving behind in all our developmental work. And so that becomes a challenge. And thankfully, I just gotten some resources to pilot it in 10 of our districts. Now, before that, we had earlier on spoken in the case of Ghana that we wanted to do some work around poverty estimates at the local government level annually, because our poverty estimates are every 5 years from the living standard measurements. And that does not help policy at the local level. But it has been very difficult to get resources to do that. So I've had to ride at the back of another program, which we have recently gotten funding from Vodafone Foundation and Hewlett Foundation to explore the use of mobile telecommunications data, geospatial data, and survey data, so to see if that will provide us an opportunity to do this. And this, for me, is an opportunity. Once we have been able to get these resources, it is an opportunity to now make the next. And so I think that it will be very useful that other NSOs may also have similar challenges. And they may be mitigating this in certain questionnaires like this would include that part of it, and only for it to, because there wouldn't be funding from this project for that. But the lens across would provide some incentive for others to also move along. So I wanted attention today. And to end with this, I think I've already mentioned this to Daniel and Viveka in the past. We also tried using citizen-generated data to fill some data gap. We completed a pilot, but within the period, we have not been able to do an evaluation to help evaluate, but it came up with very interesting findings, because when we compare with existing survey data and administrative data, we realize that this is a great opportunity to fill in that critical data gap. And it's measuring about 4 SDG indicators around gender-based violence. So I would reach out to Viveka and Daniel and then see if we can get some experts to support us to validate the data. We'll share all the data and all the things so that we can validate it. And thankfully, the institution where I got money to pilot that already are excited about it, and they are giving money to expand from the 3 districts to 30 districts now. But we don't want to start till we have done this evaluation.
Thank you so much, Omar.
Thank you very much.
Very, very interesting input. And of course, we will also take that into account. And I think in terms of the questionnaire, for us to get kind of a better idea of what the obstacles are, there is that section in the priority identification that talks about kind of what are the factors currently preventing you know, the estimates from being produced at the frequency, accuracy, etc. So that could be kind of a place to capture.
Here you're also breaking up, Elena, so maybe I'll also come in a little bit on this. And I see Daniel has put in the chat to everyone congratulating you, Omar, on the work that you've been doing. I think I definitely agree with you that we should do an evaluation with the 8 initial countries, including Ghana. Unfortunately, we weren't able initially either to identify proper funding to work with you in Ghana on the Data for Now initiative. But I think this is now an opportunity to work together on this extension of the UNSD-FCDO project where we link in Data for Now. So I think if you look at the questionnaire that we are sharing with you now more as a forward-looking, what you would want to prioritize. You mentioned some very interesting pieces of work where I hear that you already have funding, but maybe, as you said, when it comes to citizen-generated data, we could look at that opportunities together. Or if there's anything else that you think should be prioritized in the Ghanaian context, also linked to the policy needs, we would be happy to do that. So have a look through the questionnaire and discuss with colleagues. And then as Daniel is also writing, we would be happy to also have a follow-up call with you to discuss further what we could do in the 9 coming months under the current scope of the project. So yeah, unfortunately, for the initial stages of the Data for Now initiative, there were challenges in identifying funding for the trailblazer countries. I think we're now moving, luckily, in a direction where there are more openings coming. In addition to what we're doing here, it also looks like we will be able to secure funding, at least from UNSD's side, from other donors, so that we also can expand the work, and we've also we'll follow up more on that as it moves forward. Maybe there also will be possibilities to extend beyond the current scope with FCDO, but that is something that is still coming, or something that is still to be discussed. What I also wanted to say is, now I forgot, let me just give me yeah, so basically to all of you, just have a look at the questionnaire, discuss with your partners and see what you think could be most relevant to focus on for these 9 months that are left. I don't think we can have a huge scope because 9 months is limited. So think about what are kind of maybe more low-hanging fruits where you just need some support to kind of be able to move forward, to push forward maybe more quickly with the support that we can provide through the project. Also bringing in potential partners that we maybe have, that we now have established connections with through work in Senegal, Colombia, and other countries. Yeah, and the last thing I wanted to say before I hand back to Richard as well is that we really also appreciate the approach that you are taking in Ghana, Omar, where you also are working very actively to identify funding yourself. So I think that's also a very good approach where we can try and co-fund in a sense, making the work also more sustainable and making the approach more sustainable over time. So hopefully that can be a model that we also can take in other countries moving forward. Back to you, Richard.
Okay, thank you very much, Rebecca. So we're coming to the end of our time. I can't see anyone else with any further questions. So perhaps I'll bring things to a close now. Obviously, if people do have questions following on from today's webinar, once they've had a chance to digest the materials and to speak with their colleagues, please reach out either to myself, to Rebecca, or to your UNSD focal point with any questions which you have, and we'll be very happy to answer those. So before we go, so we actually have a couple of colleagues here from FCDO, Rachel and Phil. So not sure whether they would like to say a couple of words before we bring things to a close.
I'm happy to say a few words. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Great. I mean, just to say a huge thank you really to the team, because I know it's been a massive, all of our programs are always a big effort for everybody, but particularly kind of appreciate that the times have been particularly difficult the last kind of 18 months, that everybody's been working on this program. So really appreciate all the work that's been done by UNSD and Rebecca and her team, but also most importantly as well at the country level. And it's been great today to just hear more about what's actually happening and to kind of actually see that the program is having an impact and that people are using the data, which is what really, really matters. So it's just been great to be able to hear more from countries directly, and look forward to hearing even more next week at World Data Forum. Thanks very much.
Okay, brilliant. No, thank you, Rachel. It was great to hear from you, and very glad that you're able to join us for this webinar. So today you can hopefully now have a clear idea of what the Data for Now initiative is and how it fits with the UNSD-FCDO project and the planned activities for the coming year. So I think Rebecca went over some of the next steps already. So we'll be sharing the questionnaire along with the recording of the webinar, and it would be great if you're able to look at that, complete it, ideally with your colleagues from across the NSS to give us a complete picture of what your priorities are in terms of policy priorities as a country, and how what the data gaps are that relate to those priorities, and what indicators can help fill those data gaps, whether there's a need for new data if certain indicators don't exist at all, or I think as been mentioned, there's a need for more frequent, more timely, or more inclusive, more disaggregated data on the, I think as we've seen, the Data for Now initiative work, we can help provide support across all of those. So if you could complete the questionnaire, share share your thoughts on the data gaps and the needs associated with those by the 15th of October, ideally, so just over 2 weeks time, and then send those questionnaire responses back to us. That would be incredibly helpful in allowing us to kind of plan the next stages of the project. And yes, if you have any questions over that, kind of over that time, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Okay, so, anything else I've missed, Rebecca, that you think we should mention before we close the webinar today?
I think this sounds very good. So all good from my end. Thank you, Richard.
Oh, okay, that's great. So I think I'll just close by thanking everyone obviously for your participation today, but most importantly for kind of all the kind of the wonderful work that you've done kind of over the course of the project so far. Kind of, I think the kind of achievements kind of across all 20 countries have been immense, and I think that's thanks to kind of the kind of high level of engagement and activity we've seen from you. So thank you very much, and hopefully kind of you and your governments and your colleagues in line ministries are really kind of seeing the impacts and benefits of what have been done so far, and we look forward to being able to continue to work with you over this next year. So thank you very much from everyone at UNSD, and we'll be speaking with you again very soon.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.